Hello and welcome to Twisted Britain, a podcast on true crime in Britain with a sprinkling of the weird and the macabre. And your hosts are me, Bob Dale.
And me, Nadine Royal. We're a couple of friends who met in the pub and developed a friendship based on our mutual love of booze, podcasts and pub quizzes. We met in the Settlin in Stirling, and that's where we record.
Each week we'll both tell a story of something twisted, a long one and a short one, and we'll decide who goes first.
Based on the flip of a coin.
Yeah, and as soon as we hit record there, the pub went pretty much silent.
I think the jukebox cut out is part of the reason there. That or they're so enthralled by what we're possibly doing that the hush just came naturally.
Yeah, we do look ridiculous, but I can still hear Kitty laughing in the background.
Always.
How's you? You alright?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You're on the booze.
I know.
And we're not in the cellar.
I know. A fantastic week. I know I'm in a really good mood because I've got a drink in my hand.
Well, that's mainly the only reason, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible, actually. Might suffer from a small tad bit of alcoholism.
To be fair, anybody that listens to this is probably aware that we drink during it. Because the last 10 minutes of each podcast is just us slurring rubbish.
Well, for the last couple of weeks has just been you slurring rubbish. Thank you.
And I will carry on doing so.
Good. And tonight I will join you. Yeah, tomorrow I'm off work. So it's the first time since I've moved to Glasgow that I've been able to drink whilst we record. So happy days.
So sorry in advance, everybody.
Good luck to everybody.
How's your week been?
Yeah, all right, thank you. Nothing really major to report, I don't think.
No, we're kind of back on schedule. We had a couple of weeks, well, the entirety of July was just a kind of almost write-off for us.
Big cock up, really.
Yeah, big cock up, indeed. Make no jokes. But here we are.
Here we are.
We almost know what we're doing tonight.
Think so.
Yeah, so...
Just about. Do we ever?
Nah, but how's your research gone?
Yeah,
you're on
thanks.
Long Story again.
I'm on Long Story
so
twice in a row. So sorry, everybody. I know that Bob's the favourite and everything, but you'll have to suffer me tonight.
Yeah, I know.
Shut up. You're meant to be like, no, Nadine, you're fantastic.
No, Nadine, you're lovely.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
They don't have to sit across from you while you're getting drunk, though. That's it. So yeah, you're.
How was yours gone?
Good. Yeah, it's.
That sounded confident. Not really.
No, I'm fine with it. The last paragraph of my notes is pretty much going to be made up, but I know what's happening.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens.
At least you didn't write it on the bar.
No, not this time. I thought I'd better not. And I forgot a pen.
No. Unlucky.
So since we're not in the cellar, you'll hear the pub.
I know, background noise for the first time in ages. That's not just the whirring of a massive cooler keeping us and the beer very, very cold.
It was freezing in there
last week.
It was, but we rattled through it and it was good.
Mm-hmm. Tonight we're wearing beautiful attire.
Oh yeah, I have my Support Indie Podcasts t-shirt on.
Thank you very much, Zach.
Yes, which is the movement that Zach from Podcast Junkie has started.
We need to stop talking about him in our podcast. He's going to get a really big head.
What we do need to talk about, however, is the Discord server that he runs.
Yes.
So if you're a Twisted Britain fan and you want to come and hang out with loads of other podcast fans and creators and us, we're on there when we can remember. Nah, that's not true. I'm on there a fair amount.
I'm getting better at it. I've got my
better.
Notifications on now, which I've only just discovered how to do. So now I know that people are talking to me. Mostly Ruckland. What's up?
Hey, Ruck, how are you? If you fancy joining a lovely group of people, there's over 800 people on the server now, which is nuts, isn't it? Look up our social media after you hear this episode go out, and we'll put a link. We'll pin a link to the top of each of our social medias where you can find it. And there's a Twisted Britain channel there, which we'll put a link to, and you'll be able to talk to us in there. But there's loads of other audio dramas, true crime podcasts. Oh god, it's really varied actually. And there's a nice general chat where everybody mainly posts pictures of their cats. Or
it's delightful.
Or I post a picture of me drinking a beer when everybody says good morning.
Yeah, because they're all in America. Or I just rip into Zach a fair amount these days, it would appear. We have a love-hate relationship, which I'm enjoying immensely.
I don't think there's any hate there at all.
No, not really. Well, there will soon turn to hate if he dares to slag me off again. And
on that lovely note, shall we flip a coin?
Yes.
Right, ready?
Ready. Heads, you go first.
Wait, it's a head, so I'm going first.
Oh, is it not a buffalo or a mountain?
No, it's just a head or a tail this week.
It's not a buffalo. What's it on that coin again?
A yak.
Not seen that coin in a while.
Neither have I. It's probably in the cellar. So my story this week is a bit of a mystery story for you.
Love a mystery. That's some heavy DOMs in the back there.
Yeah. Some heavy-handed DOMs, wow. So yeah, a bit of a mystery for you because there was no outright solving of this case. The case is the Pimlico Mystery.
Never heard.
Neither have I. And I found it just... it was a random Google.
Love it. What did you Google?
Unsolved murder mysteries.
Okay.
I think it was something...
Straightforward.
Something is... And I got a lot of games. And like the street games, have you seen them? Where you can go out and you
Yes.
get,
did
you
you
get
not?
the app?
You did one.
Yeah, we did
in
one.
Stirling.
It was really cool,
I
actually.
bumped into you when you were on it.
Yeah, you were on the long walk of shame home.
Very long walk of shame. It was roasting hot. I felt very ill. You asked me to join you, and I declined because I had to go home and try not to be sick.
I think you told me to duck off.
Did I?
Yes,
Is that the words that
it might have been those exact words, or something similar.
Oh.
So yes, this is the Pimlico Mystery. So this is the story of the death of Thomas Edwin Bartlett. Now, I'm going to call him Edwin because that's what he got called. So Edwin died in the Pimlico area of London, and the main suspect in the case was his wife, Adelaide. And Edwin was a grocery store owner. And I make a point of saying owner because I think he owned quite a few.
Okay.
He was doing reasonably well for himself. He was, however, found dead and to have had a rather large quantity of chloroform in his stomach. However, there was no trace of it in his mouth or his throat.
Ooh.
So at the centre of this mystery is a weird three-way relationship between Thomas, Adelaide, and the Reverend George Dyson, who, as far as I can tell, was no relation to the Hoovers.
Good to know.
Specifically the Hoovers, not the inventor.
No.
So Reverend George was one of Adelaide's friends and her spiritual advisor. And some accounts, he was the couple's advisor. So I don't know whether that was together or separately, but what we do know is that the Reverend and Adelaide had a working spiritual relationship and also a bit of a...
non-working physical?
Yes, let's go with that. That's not quite what I've written here. They had a bit of a more involved friendship relationship, shall we say. However, with the blessing of Thomas.
Oh, okay. Unusual, but okay.
With Edwin. So, Edwin was suffering from several unpleasant illnesses, including rotting teeth and tapeworms.
Oh, Christ.
He was something of a faddist, and he believed in, like, the thing of the time. Mm-hmm. He was also really into, like, animal magnetism. So not that animals stick together, more that everything has an aura. And everything
I can get behind that.
Help you in some way. So, like, even a carrot has an aura, and then, like, everything does.
Oh, no, okay, I can't get behind that. I'm going to pause to say here that getting a tapeworm is my idea of absolute hell on earth. Fuck.
I really thought you were going to go with, like, the best diet ever.
That's what they used to do that, didn't they, back in Victorian times, like, purposely swallow the eggs so they'd get a tapeworm and get real skinny. But I remember when I was at school, right, when I was studying biology.
I'm glad you put studying biology in there, okay.
We had to do this whole bit on parasites, and they made us watch this, it was like a documentary about a guy who purposely gave himself a tapeworm to see what would happen. And it was just horrific. Do you know how you find out if you've got a tapeworm? Like, normally, like, you've lost a bit of weight and stuff and you don't really know why. But it's like when you start pooing it out.
That's what I was going to say. There's only one way they come out, isn't there?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's hell.
So that was not the point I thought we would stop on there.
Sorry,
but never mind.
I can't tell you how much the idea of a tapeworm freaks me out. It really does.
So yeah, he believed in animal magnetism as a key to health. So a way of doing things is you used bits and pieces to try and clean your body out, kind of thing. However, most of his eccentricities are based on what we learned from Adelaide and the Reverend Dyson. So we can't take them as 100% correct because they both have a reason to lie. It is speculated that due to his illnesses that it was pretty much a platonic relationship that him and Adelaide shared. And by some accounts, that was a deliberate, like, they had got together not on a sexual manner. They were together for a platonic relationship. And Adelaide actually claimed that they'd only had sex once in their relationship. However, she could have meant they only had unprotected sex once.
Oh, okay.
Because she did fall pregnant in 1881, but sadly the baby was stillborn, and we're pretty sure that was Edwin's baby.
Okay.
It was in 1885 when the couple met and befriended the Reverend Dyson, who was a Wesleyan minister, which is basically following the scriptures of a guy called Wesleyan. It's not like, I looked into it to see if it was like a special type of religion, and it wasn't. It's Protestantism, but by but as told by the Reverend Wesleyan.
Right.
So Dyson became a regular visitor in their lives, and it wasn't long before he became the spiritual advisor to both of them. It's around this time that Adelaide and the Reverend struck up their relationship. Whether it was with Thomas's consent or not, we'll never know. But what we do know, is that Thomas made Dyson the executor of the will, leaving his entire estate to his wife Adelaide, on one condition. And the condition being that she not remarry after his death.
That's so harsh.
Quite harsh, but however quite common.
Odd though that, so you said that he was accepting of her and the Reverend.
So my next part of my notes is, which I find odd, because if he had no issue with their relationship,
then why?
Then why would he make that stipulation? But from what I could read, it seemed to be a fairly common thing in a will. You will get everything I leave to you, but you must be the bereaved widow for the rest of your life.
But surely, see if you... Right, he's dead, right? They give you everything that you're due as his bereaved widow. Then you remarry, do they take it back off you?
I don't know. I presume you're in breach of contract at that point.
So they take it in...
So I don't know whether it goes to the state, or maybe it goes to another relation, or...
Wow, okay.
But that was the stipulation. However, like I say, I find that odd. If he had no issue with their relationship, then that wouldn't have been a stipulation. However, later on that year, and only 4 months before he died, the will was redrawn, and at this point, that stipulation was removed from the will. So Edwin's illnesses, and I use illnesses with air quotes here, they're a bit of a controversial thing. Edwin went to see a doctor by the name of Alfred Leach, who found on first inspection of Edwin, a blue line around the edge of Edwin's gums, which is known to be a side effect of lead poisoning. Dr. Leach, however, thought it might have been due to taking mercury for syphilis. However, Edwin claimed to have never had syphilis, at this point also claiming that he had an active sex life with his wife, which is gone...
Contrary to what she says.
Contrary to what she says, indeed. But Dr. Leach thought, it's fine, we'll treat for that. However, I'm going to go out on a limb here and speculate that Adeline had maybe already tried to kill him at this point. With a lead as a poison. However, this is a pretty shitty way of trying to kill someone, as it would have taken ages.
Long game.
At the insistence of Edwin, Dr. Leach prescribed chloroform against his better judgment, and he put this down to the patient's insistence and his weird ideas about how to deal with illnesses. So probably going back to that faddist animal magnetism type thing, that he thought, oh no, it's fine, I can cleanse the body with this. Chloroform is known as a way to help to get to sleep, obviously.
Pretty extreme.
Pretty extreme, but it's exactly how you're imagining on a cloth is how they used it. They put a small amount in cloth and they breathed it in.
Snifter.
And it would alleviate pain and help you sleep.
Yep.
So, like I say, at the insistence of Edwin, Dr. Leach prescribed it. Anyway, whatever the reason for the poisoning that caused the blueness around his gums, Adelaide played the dutiful wife and helped nurse him back to health. But was this a cover? Adelaide sought the help of the Reverend to go and collect the chloroform, as it would help ease the pain and help him sleep. But as was the norm back in the day, like we talked about during one of my Square Mile murders, if you go and collect a large quantity of something that's considered a poison,
they make a note
that you have to sign a book to take it. So he managed to get round this. So he was collecting something like 4 fluid ounces of chloroform. But instead of going and getting it in one quantity in one shop, he went to 3 different chemists and collected small bottles of it.
When you say he, do you mean referring to the Reverend?
The Reverend,
right.
sorry. The Reverend went out And he collected 4 small bottles, an ounce each, and he didn't have to sign any documents at all to say he was taking this away. Telling each of the chemists that it was to remove grease stains.
Chloroform does everything, huh?
Well,
just like heroin.
Yeah. I'm sure it was morphine rather than heroin, was it not?
Oh, I can't remember. Any of them. Got a cough, take them all.
Yeah. So I find it incredibly suspicious that he's gone out of his way to not sign a book anywhere.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely strange.
And make up some shit. Like,
yeah.
If you've been prescribed it, then you just go and collect it and sign the book.
It was like that one we did where, what was it she was collecting? Oh, it was arsenic. Arsenic, yeah, that was your one. And she was like, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm killing rats, and yeah.
And she was using it for skin whitening when she confessed and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this was basically, I'm using it to get rid of grease stains.
If you're making up a lie, you're already like guilty of something.
So this I find odd because he later says, I had no part in the like I just was told to go and collect these in small amounts everywhere, and like I say, suspicious as
You're
fuck.
not an idiot though, are you, Reverend?
Anyway, so he returns back to the house and decants all these bottles into one big bottle, and hands it over to Adelaide. Crash forward a wee bit, and Edwin goes out on New Year's Eve in 1885 to the dentist to have a tooth removed. Remember we said he had
rotten teeth.
Rotting teeth. So he had a tooth removed, which was just a normal thing.
Probably needed them all, to be honest.
Yeah. And he might have got them all done if, when he returned to his house to go to sleep next to his dutiful wife, he never woke up again. He went to bed that night next to his wife not long after this. However, in the early morning of New Year's Day, 1886, Adelaide got up and went and fetched the maid and asked her to go and check on Edwin as she feared he was dead. She was correct. He was dead. Due to there being no obvious signs of death, it was first thought to have been a suicide. But Dr. Leach, who had prescribed the chloroform, ordered an autopsy to be carried out. And when they opened the stomach, there was an overwhelming smell of chloroform. Like I said earlier.
Everyone had a wee nap, came back to it.
Yeah, but with no signs of burning, and that's what it does. Is if you had ingested it, it would have burnt the tissue. Edwin's father, who had always really hated Adelaide, started to make a pretty big fuss about all of this, and pressed the point that he wanted an inquest into his son's death, which he got. And the outcome? Willful murder.
Okay.
So Adelaide was brought to trial on the 12th of April 1886, attracting huge media coverage. She was defended by Sir Edward Clarke, who basically went on the theory of suicide. They basically went on and said, although Edwin's postmortem revealed a huge amount of chloroform in his stomach, there was no trace of it in his mouth or throat, and that the liquid would have burnt the tissue on the way down. And if she'd waited till he'd fallen asleep and poured it in, some of it would have gone into his lungs. And there was no trace of it found in his lungs either. In her defence, they said that she couldn't have administered it because it would have tasted minging, and he'd have thrown up. And there's all these tiny like little pieces of like, it can't have been her because this would have happened. It can't have been her because there was no trace of that.
That sounds fair.
At this point, they managed to get the Reverend off as taking
careful
behave. As taking no part in the murder. He was actually brought to trial as a witness for both the defence and the prosecution against the case. And he basically told the story on both occasions. I went to the shop, I got these bits, I came home, put it in a bottle, handed it to Adelaide. Don't know what happened. And they pretty much believed him, which is fair because I don't know if he was just a dumb young lover.
Right.
So the defence basically painted this picture of a devoted wife nursing her six husbands. Six husbands, all of them were ill.
Bloody hell.
Sick husband back to health, which sadly ended up with him killing himself.
But why? Why would he want to kill himself? What's the reason?
Well, because he was...
Because he's got a tapeworm.
His wife was sleeping with somebody else. He had all these illnesses. He was dying anyway. Loads of different bits and pieces.
Okay.
In the closing address to the jury, the defence counsel said, "From the moment of the death, every word and act of hers looks like it's been the word and act of a woman who's conscious of her innocence." Edward had created enough doubt in the jury that they managed to acquit her. But it was a bit of a kind of oh, right, I'll take what you're saying because there's no evidence that she did do it, but there's also no evidence.
Kind of like conviction of like not enough evidence rather than like not guilty.
Yeah, basically there wasn't enough evidence to say how or who administered that chloroform and got it into his stomach.
Because surely though, like, see them ruling like her not, like, because if it was suicide, like all the arguments they've got for her not having killed him using the chloroform all stand for him not committing suicide. Because like if he drank it, then he would have vomited and it would have burnt his throat. So it's the same argument.
So I've got a speculation on this that I'll give to you at the end. Okay. So the wonderful quote that was given by the jury as they handed over this acquittal, they basically said, "We think grave suspicion is attached to this prisoner." So they were pretty sure they did it, but they couldn't prove it.
Yeah, not enough evidence.
So she was let go.
And that's it.
However, Sir James Pagnant, who was a surgeon and pathologist in London, basically he was convinced that she was, and stood in front of the court and said, "Now that it is all over, she should tell us, in the interest of science, how she did it."
Yes.
She never did.
Bitch.
She pretty much fell out of the public eye.
As you would.
They've no idea whether she ran off with the Reverend or whether there was a falling out between them because he will have delivered evidence against her and all sorts. But we don't know what happened to Madeline, to Adelaide, and we don't know who killed Edwin Bartlett.
Well, that's an awful shame if you ask me.
So my theory...
Right, yeah, no, I can't wait for this.
It was given to him in some kind of vial that would break in the stomach.
Oh, but then there'd be glass?
It doesn't have to be a glass one. Swallow a condom.
They'd find it, though, in his stomach when they opened.
Yeah, possibly, but I can't think of another way of chloroform
ice.
being
You'd
present.
have to freeze it in ice. Like that classic, that classic riddle. There's a man dead
hanging.
In the room.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. But the autopsy showed that there was definitely chloroform in his stomach, and that's what he died of. But there was no evidence of how it got there. So, like I said, a mystery for you.
Up his arse. They shoved it up his arse.
The tapeworm did it.
Oh my god, it was him the whole time.
Terry Tapeworm did it.
Terry, don't name him.
He's a pet. You've had him forever.
He's a pest, is what he is.
He's a pest. A chloroform pest. So that is the...
No, stop it. We're not done. That's going to bother me forever.
Well, it has been bothering science since the 1880s. A good, 140
Did
years later.
Did you sniff that much of it that it recondensed in your stomach?
Your scientific knowledge baffles me sometimes.
It's a wonder I've got a degree. I have a Bachelor of Science degree, I'll have you know.
I know.
You're being very rude. My science is solid.
We'll speak to your lecturers and see what they think.
I'm going to go home and huff as much chloroform as I can.
No, because then I'd need to do this by myself and then there'd be nobody to talk to.
I'm sure you could manage.
Just be an empty microphone.
You could talk to a wall, I'm pretty sure.
Thanks for that. So that is the Pimlico Mystery.
I love it and I hate it.
It's a very sad story of Thomas Edwin Bartlett's death. He was a very poorly man.
It's sad either way. If he was murdered, it's sad. If he committed suicide, it's also sad, isn't it?
He was murdered. She did it.
You're so certain?
I'm absolutely certain she did it. But I don't.
How?
But I don't know how.
In a condom's a shit.
I'm speculating. I don't.
What year was this?
1885.
Weren't condoms back then made of absolute bananas? Not actual bananas. Just bananas material.
Oh yeah, I mean.
Were they not made of leather?
Like a leather pouch.
Yeah.
Well, that might be dissolved in the stomach then.
Leather's not going to dissolve in your belly, is it?
Well, chloroform's not going to recondense in your stomach either, is it?
Prove it.
If you huff it, it goes into your lungs, you dafty.
Let's end it.
On that wonderful,
we'll never solve it.
That wonderful note from our Bachelor of Science there. We're going to go for a break. If you have ever read...
If you have a theory...
Yeah, if you have a theory, please hit us up, because it's one that I went,
I'm going
that
with
can't
ice.
be the end.
They froze it.
They froze it. Okay. I'm going with some kind of vessel.
Condom.
Of getting it in there. Maybe not. I mean, condom
No,
was just
that's what you've said now.
Right, okay, fine. We'll see you in a minute.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Rachel.
And we are
Spree.
Every 2 weeks, we like to bring the best British cases, ranging from heists to serial killers to general misfortune.
Each episode will also offer an unsolved mystery, conspiracy, ghost story, or legend.
We then chase it down with a dose of our favourite dumb criminals.
Check us out on iTunes and Podbean, and follow us on Twitter @SpreePodcast.
And that's us back.
Hello.
Hello. Not much happened there, really, did it?
No, went for a fag.
Well, I mean, that's the standard. I think that goes without saying, doesn't it? I had a pee.
Ooh, so did I.
Oh, cheeky pee. Nice. Sorry, that was too much information, everybody. Sorry about that. But that is us back, and we are heading straight into Nadine's story.
Let's go. I think you probably will have heard of this because it's very modern.
Yeah, well, so we've gone back to the normal part of the pub. You're drinking, and you're doing a story I've probably heard of because it was just last week. So it's just classic Twisted Britain then.
Well, it's back in June, so... yeah, back to it. Why fix something that's not broken?
Indeed, darling. Crack on.
Okay, so I'm doing the story of a woman called Sally Challen.
Okay.
So, Sally Challen, who was jailed for life for killing her husband in a hammer attack following decades of emotional abuse, walked free from court back in June of this year after a judge announced she would not face a retrial.
I think hammer attack's probably two of the worst words to put together.
Yes. That and tapeworm.
Oh, okay, yeah, fine. A tapeworm hammer attack, terrible.
Oh my god. Another way in which I don't want to die.
I've actually run out of space on my computer, saving ways that you don't want to die.
There's not many left. I would go by shark, by the way. I don't know if I've ever stated that.
You'd be happy to die by shark?
Sharks, yeah. Because it'd be one of those kind of deaths where if you had to come into this pub and tell the whole pub, Nadine's dead, she was eaten by sharks, people would think you were joking and wouldn't believe you, and also it'd be a pretty gnarly tale to tell.
There'd be so many questions, like why the fuck were you in the ocean with a shark? I mean, did you have your armbands on? Had you eaten an hour before you'd been in the water? Just so many things.
So many questions that would be unanswered, and it'd be a mystery for the ages.
I know, and one day we'll finish your swimming lessons and you'll be okay.
Fuck you, I'm a strong swimmer. Right, Challen, she was 65, was sentenced at the Old Bailey in London to 9 years and 4 months at her hearing this year, which was time that she had already served for the manslaughter of her husband, Richard.
Okay.
Speaking at a press conference afterwards, she said, "My family have served my sentence with me. They have kept me going for a long and terrible 9 years. I want also to thank my friends in and out of prison who have stood by me." So Challen said she suffered years of controlling and humiliating abuse before she killed her 61-year-old husband in August 2010. She was jailed for life for murder with a minimum tariff of 22 years, which was later reduced to 18, after a trial at Guildford Crown Court in 2011.
So was that including the 9 years served?
So that's what she was sentenced to originally, was the 22 years, later reduced to 18. She served 9, and at a hearing this year.
Okay.
That's what they were like. They said, your sentence should have been 9 years and 4 months, which is what she had served, and they released her.
Oh, that's handy.
Not bad, huh? Her defence at trial was diminished responsibility, but the legal team downplayed the abusive behaviour of her husband. In February of this year, a fresh trial was ordered in light of new evidence about her mental state at the time of the killing. The appeal court was told she had 2 mental disorders at the time of the killing, and that her condition was likely to have been made worse by the coercive control she was suffering, which I'll go more into.
Yeah, okay.
Challen, who's from Claygate, Surrey, admitted manslaughter but pleaded innocent to murder. She was due to face a new trial on the 1st of July of this year, but at a hearing before Mr. Justice Edis at the Old Bailey, her plea of a lesser charge was accepted. As her charge was reduced, the court ordered that she had already served her sentence and should be released at once.
Okay. That's quite a statement.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So Challen's son David tweeted, As a family, we are overjoyed at today's verdict and that it has brought an end to the suffering we have endured together for the past 9 years. Our story has become the landmark case society needs to recognise the true severity of coercive control. In a victim impact statement read to the court, Challen's other son, James, said, "We have lost a father and we do not seek to justify our mother's actions." He said his mother does not deserve to be punished further.
What? Doesn't deserve to be punished further than 9 and a bit years in jail?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that I think is like a really powerful statement. The fact that like they did lose their father, like she killed their dad, and they've stood by her, is like a major statement. And I'll get more into why I think that's completely right.
Yeah.
Like I'm completely behind everything to do with this.
I'm kind of like, there's loads of things whirling around in my brain right now when you say that, because she killed him.
Yes.
And to serve 9 years and 4 months for taking away another human's life is quite a short period of time.
It is, yeah.
But
well, it's half the sentence that she was due.
It's half the sentence she was due. It's a lot less than the sentence that both of us feel that a murderer should get.
Yes.
But then I presume you're going to go on to explain to me why.
Yes, yeah. So like this story was, my mum talked to me about it because it's been in the news the past couple of months that she's been released, and it's like it is this massive kind of statement about domestic abuse at the end of the day is what this boils down to, and how that can really take a toll on a person's mental state and the way in which it should be looked upon differently. You know, like I'll get more into exactly how she suffered.
So like the crime of murder/manslaughter isn't a justifiable response to an action, but an action it needs to be taken into account as to what's driven you to that point.
Yes, 100%.
Right.
So when Challen walked free from court, she was applauded by supporters. At a press conference, she said, "Many other women who are victims of abuse, as I was, are in prison today serving life sentences. They should not be serving sentences for murder, but for manslaughter. I still love Richard and miss him dreadfully and wish that none of this had happened. I'm just so happy I can begin to live my life again. I've had major ups and major downs. Without the support of my family and my endless telephone calls to them at inappropriate times, I don't know how I would have coped. It has been a really long road, and at one point I didn't see any light at the end of it. It's wonderful to be free and to be able to see my sons. I'm so grateful to them." And again, that's to me like a really strong statement, her saying there's like other women who've been through what I've been through, or worse or less worse, whatever, but abuse nonetheless, and they're serving sentences like life sentences for murder, but it should be manslaughter. So she even in herself agrees like she did need to serve time for what she did.
That's an interesting thought process from a convicted manslaughterist. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the right term there is, but because she's clearly acknowledging that
a crime was committed.
What she did was incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
And she should serve time for that.
Yep.
But there are other people out there that need to be taken into consideration in the same way she was.
100%, yeah. And I completely agree with her. So Challen has even said that schools should teach children about coercive control, as boys as well as girls can suffer from it. She said, "They're damaged and it's damage done to them for the rest of their lives. Teachers also should be aware and look around their classrooms and make the children aware of what could happen."
Maybe controversial statement here. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Teachers should look around the classrooms and identify issues that are going on in the children's lives. But that's a outside of school lesson to me.
Do you think so?
I think so. I mean, the teachers have so much on their plate already. Teaching the curriculum in Scotland and England, I don't know the English one as well, is fucking full.
I know
already, and I know a good.
But then that's why you've got guidance teachers in school.
Yeah, but you only have a certain amount of hours in every day.
True.
And it's a parent's place to instill morals in a child.
True, but the issue is if they're children, presumably the coercive control is being done onto them by their parents.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
So who else is going to teach them about that and to look out for that?
Yeah, okay. If
you're being abused at home, it's your parents probably.
Yeah, it is, and I don't take away from that by what I said, but I just do feel that there's a time and place for education, and there's also a time and place for learning to be a human being.
Yeah, okay.
And not that they're mutually exclusive, but I don't think it's solely a teacher's place to do that.
No, I don't think it's solely. I think like what she's trying to say with her statement is just that...
A recognition of it in schools.
That I think like slowly over the past, I don't know, this is just arbitrary, like over the past decade, say, like there has been a heightened awareness of abuse like that children can suffer at home and stuff, and there's been more of a like an onus put onto teachers and to people to recognise signs of abuse. And I think she's just trying to say that this is another form of abuse, which has only just recently been recognised and also needs to be looked out for.
I think that's one of the outcomes of that kind of social media generation, and that putting yourself out there and having everything so instantly available is that the good thing is that a lot of things are coming to light that will help young people in the future. Things like the awareness of abuse and things like that, because they don't have to be stood alone by themselves.
Yes.
And I'm not taking away from a teacher's role in that, but there are other places, you know, you've got your Scout leaders, your Boys Brigade leaders, your Girl Guides leaders, and all that kind of stuff that are hugely moral, upstanding people in children's lives. I know for myself, I was Boys Brigade for years, and some of the men that were leaders when I was there, were officers when I was there, are still huge role models to me now, and I'm 30, nearly 7 years old. And I believe that they instilled the morals in me as much as my parents or my teachers did.
Yeah, okay.
And there's that kind of take on it as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, I'm just waffling now.
No, not at all. I think it's a good point. The prospect of a retrial for Sally was seen as a key test of new laws on domestic abuse and coercive control. The family say Richard Challen subjected his wife to decades of psychological abuse, which is referred to as coercive control under laws introduced in only 2015. So it's only like recently been recognised as a form of abuse.
It's really scary, isn't it?
It's really scary. So like to go more into it, Richard Challen was unfaithful throughout the marriage and frequently visited brothels. Sally Challen moved out of the family home in 2009, but was said to still be emotionally dependent on her husband. When she discovered he had contacted another woman, she hit him more than 20 times with a hammer.
Wow.
Hammer attack, for sure.
Hammer attack, indeed.
According to Justice for Women, which is a .org website, Sally killed Richard after years of being controlled and humiliated by him. At the time of her conviction, coercive control was not a crime in England and Wales and became recognised as a form of domestic abuse in 2015. Coercive control involves psychological abuse and can involve manipulation, degradation, gaslighting, which, for anybody that doesn't know, is using mind games to make the other person doubt their sanity, and generally monitoring and controlling the person's day-to-day life, such as who they're friends with, what activities they partake in, and what clothing they wear. This often leads to the abused becoming isolated and dependent on their abuser.
Yeah.
Sally was only 16 when she met 22-year-old Richard. At first he was charming, but gradually the abuse began. He bullied and belittled her, controlled their money and who she was friends with, and wouldn't allow her to socialise without him. But whilst controlling her, Richard would flaunt his money and had numerous affairs and would visit brothels, supposedly including one where trafficked women were being held.
A wonderful, upstanding member of the community. Then.
It was also said that Richard sent out a Christmas card one year that showed him standing with his Ferrari and two women in bikinis.
Lucky him.
Well, if she challenged him, he would turn it back on her and make her feel like she was going mad or making it all up, which is gaslighting.
Yeah.
Richard's abuse towards Sally could at times become physical. Supposedly, one instance of this was after one of his friends kissed her. Richard apparently anally raped Sally as a punishment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have maybe put a trigger warning of some form there, because that's horrendous.
Yeah, that's not well, it is a punishment, but that's just not okay.
No.
At all.
No. So even Challen's two sons have said that Richard consistently humiliated her by doing things like criticising her weight and her appearance, and he isolated her from support networks and controlled every aspect of her life. So that's even their sons had noticed the level of control that he enacted upon her, which is a severe form of abuse.
I would hope that they are more of their mother's son than their father's son.
I think the fact that they stood by her through her 9 years in prison says so.
That's what I was just thinking, is like the fact that they've come out and said things like that means that they are better human beings than their father was.
Yeah, I think so. Although Sally did manage at one point to leave Richard and even started divorce proceedings, she was so emotionally dependent on him that she returned to him and was made to sign a post-nuptial agreement he drew up that denied her full financial entitlement in the divorce and forbade her from interrupting him or speaking to strangers. Richard's behaviour became increasingly abusive and humiliating for Challen, and the final straw came after 31 years of marriage, when he sent her out in the rain to get his lunch so that he could phone a woman he had been planning to meet from a dating agency. Sally returned suspicious and challenged him. He commanded her to not question him, and she struck him repeatedly with a hammer, which she had concealed in her bag. When she was finished, she stuck a tea towel in his mouth and wrapped his body in old curtains. She wrote a note that read, "I love you, Sally," and placed it on the body before driving back to her home. It wasn't until the next day, after she had driven one of their sons to work, that she drove to Beachy Head, called her cousin to confess, and then walked to the edge of a cliff. She had to be talked down by a suicide prevention team.
Good on them.
Yeah. So...
Well, I say good on them, but she still committed an act of murder, manslaughter. Not that I would want her to jump by any means,
no.
But I feel like she's obviously seen the weight of what she's done and then gone, oh shit. But then, as you've already alluded to, or in fact what you've already said, is she takes full responsibility for what she did.
I think with this case, like, when you've been married to somebody for 31 years and almost the entirety of your marriage has been abuse, and you've been isolated and controlled to such an extent that you feel so alone and so trapped, what is there left?
What's your way out? Yeah. Okay.
What's there left
totally.
to do? You know? So, like, even though, no, I will never agree with murder and stuff, I kind of agree with it here. Because what are you going to do? And, like, I'm going to...
Has she outreached for help?
No, because he's cut her off. Like,
because she
was cut off from all.
She's been so gaslighted that she's got no way out.
Nothing to do. No, like when you've been controlled and abused at that level for that long.
Yeah, I totally.
You just don't even know what's real anymore.
I know, and that's. I almost feel bad at myself right now because my brain's fizzing. Why didn't she scream?
Yeah, why didn't she ask for help?
Yeah.
But it's
and
so
I
difficult
totally
as a
understand
victim.
that she's a victim. She's an incredible victim of some horrific abuse. But just, and I'm just only saying this because it's just fizzing around my head. Just shout for help! Shout for help! Shout for help! Tell your sons, and if they're old enough to be going to work, but they're seeing it as well, obviously. But make a positive life decision. That makes it sound so trite.
The thing is, though, is that, like, she did manage to leave him.
Yeah.
And she moved out. She began divorce proceedings. But she was so isolated, and he'd made her so dependent on him, which is what these abusers are the best at doing.
Yeah.
That the minute she was without him, still didn't feel right.
She was lost at that point, yeah. Okay.
So following on from that, I'll go more into exactly how bad coercive control can become and how bad abuse can, like, leave a victim. So more specifically to Sally, the Shadow Equalities Minister, Carolyn Harris, said Challen's was a landmark case for victims of coercive control. So the law describes coercive control as a continuing act or pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation and intimidation or other abuse that is used to harm, punish or frighten their victim. It includes things like isolating the victim from friends and family, constantly humiliating and degrading them and threatening them. The government has said it's primarily used against women and girls. During Sally's appeal, retired forensic social worker Professor Stark was called to give his expert opinion. He said that, in its extreme, coercive control creates a hostage-like feeling of entrapment, similar to being a prisoner of war. Stark also told the court that homicide is the ultimate risk of coercive control. This would mean that Sally's attack on Richard wasn't a result of jealousy over the latest signs of Richard's infidelity, which is what was put across at trial, but as a consequence of decades of psychological manipulation and domestic abuse that would have left Sally feeling trapped and unable to escape unless by suicide or murder.
Yeah.
So that's how serious it becomes, is that
you get to the point where you've
got nothing.
Well, you've one way out. One of you has to die.
Yeah. Because either, like, there's just you have nothing left. Like, you've been cut off by any friends that have tried to make you see the light. Like, they're the first to go. Like, anybody that goes, I don't know about your marriage to Richard, you know, he seems a bit controlling, like, you should stand up for yourself. He'll cut them out. Gone. They're gone.
Yeah.
Your family, anybody that's going to support you and tell you that you're right and he's wrong, he'll get rid of them. Your
mum's trying to break us up. This is terrible.
Yeah.
All that kind of...
Oh, she's a bitch. Like, you know, like, they're gone. They're cut. Like, everybody just, like, slowly, they just dwindle you down until the only person you've got is them.
You get to the point where you're just living in that bubble of you as a diminished human and this controlling character.
And it's things like, you know, oh, I'm only doing this because I love you. Can't you see how much I love you? This is an act of love. And, like, it becomes so warped in your own head that you just no longer know what's real anymore and what's right, and it gets to the point where you feel stupid almost and silly and crazy. So like it's
very clever language.
It's very clever language.
I use the word clever kind of reticently there, but it's so directional and purposeful, the language used to berate and degrade you, isn't it? It's breaking you down into a lesser human.
Yeah, 100%. And like you just, for her to, like you saying like all you wanted her to do was like reach out for help.
Yeah.
The idea of even doing that, you feel stupid about it because you're like, I can't phone this helpline for abused women. Like, I'm not really abused. Like, there's women that are much worse than me. My husband doesn't hit me.
Yeah, and I can't speak to my best mate Sally because he's already said she's against us. Yeah.
She's jealous of our love. Like, we've got this fantastic life, and she's just jealous. Like, it's just, and years and years and years and years of it, you just become
31.
31.
Yeah.
31 years of it, and you just become the shell of a person.
That gets pretty hard.
It's fucked. It makes me very upset.
I can actually tell. I was going to say
I feel very strongly about this.
I know you do, and I think it's the only time we've sat down to do a story where I've seen literally, not that you're not jovial this evening, but it's your...
Oh, I'm deadpan.
You're deadpan. You absolutely serious, Nadine, tonight, and I get that. That's why I'm enjoying this. Actually, it's really good. But I can see it's something that's passionate to you.
I feel very strongly about it. But according to rightsofwomen.org, the offence of coercive control came into force on 29th of December 2015. It only applies to behaviour that happened after the 29th of December 2015.
So it's not you can't use legacy from that?
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. If your abuser started the abuse before this date and the behaviour continued after that date, then they can be charged for that behaviour. But
from
only
that date.
The behaviour that occurred after.
Right, okay.
They cannot be charged for the behaviour before the 29th of December 2015. But it can be helpful in showing the bad character of that person and can be used to support your case against them.
That's really terrible.
It's shit. It's completely shit.
Yeah. I was just gonna say this in there. I was listening to the Golden State Killer, the Man in the Window podcast. If you haven't listened to, is incredible. But there's a whole thing in there about the rapes that he committed have a statute of limitation on them. So if they weren't prosecuted within 3 years of them happening, he's not going to be prosecuted for them. And that's that kind of same thing. Is it still happened? Whether it happened before, was it December 2015 or not?
Yeah, it still happened.
It still happened. So it's still a crime.
The statute of limitations is the stupidest thing in the world. I hate it so much.
Absolutely. Sorry, that was just a wee off the cuff because I was listening to it on the walk up the road there.
Yeah, no, totally fine. I hate that rules. And it is exactly the same as this.
That's
there's like a cut-off point where it doesn't count anymore. And that's just absolutely dreadful.
So it's almost as if Now, I'm not saying this is the case, but you could imagine some horrible bastard out there doing everything doing whatever they want up until that date, and then just being Mr. Nice after that, or Mrs. Nice after that, and going, you can't get me because everything I did was before Sunday, or whatever it was.
Yeah, so fuck you.
Yeah. It's really terrible.
Shocking, isn't it? Or like you were in, and like much the case with like most of these like victims, say you were in a relationship before that date with a person.
Yeah.
You were lucky enough that you're no longer in that relationship anymore after that date. And then it takes you a while of recuperation and like get therapy or whatever, like before just getting over it before
take the time to actually report it. Yeah.
Before you even realize that you're a victim of it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you reconnect to people and you talk about stuff and you talk to people and suddenly you go,
your husband doesn't do that?
Yeah. Oh, that's not right?
Yeah. No, that's terrible.
And then you go, oh, I've been a total victim of abuse and I've not even realised because the gaslighting's been so strong that I didn't even realise how bad this was. And then you want to report it, but you can't. And then that person is free to go on and do it again to another poor person, you know?
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's no better term for it. It is fucked, yeah.
So if a person is reported to be enacting coercive control, then the police can do anything from warn the person to charging them. If found guilty of coercive control, then a person can be sentenced up to 5 years in prison or fined or both.
So nothing, pretty much.
Nothing. But it's something. It's a start.
You're not going to do the full 5 years, and that. Yeah, no, that's not. That's not a.
It's not justice.
It's not a justifiable sentence for the acts that you're.
No.
Taking part in.
No. The court may also serve a restraining order to the person in order to protect the victim, whether the accused is convicted or not.
Okay, well that's interesting, yeah.
So even if they're not convicted of coercive control, the court might still say, but we're going to slap you with this restraining order, don't go near them.
Yeah, so they can get a slap on the wrist anyway and go...
If you go near them and you break the terms of that, and if that restraining order, then you're going to be arrested.
And I would imagine it'll be the same kind of case as if they get a new girlfriend/boyfriend or whatever. If we have any report of this... Again.
Oh, well, yeah, you know that's going to be dragged back up
You're up
again.
a certain creek without a paddle.
Probably, yeah. I just want to end this on, like, saying that Women's Aid campaigned for coercive control to be recognised as a criminal offence. And they also have a free 24-hour helpline, which you can phone if you fear you have been or are the victim of any form of domestic abuse, coercive control or other.
Do you have the phone number? Yeah.
It is 0808 2000 247. So that's 0808 2000 247.
And that's in the UK?
In the UK. So if you have any concern, any worry, like, they're there to talk to. Like, you know, like, even if you think, I don't know, sometimes, like, my partner does stuff, but it doesn't feel quite right, but I don't know if it's abuse or not, phone them. They're there to talk to you, and it's free.
Absolutely.
And they're there 24 hours a day. Phone them and talk to somebody.
I was going to say to you at the end of this, just before you finish up there, it feels like almost one of these ones that after the credits we need to put up a thing that says if you've been affected by
100%
something said in this podcast, then please contact. But that's exactly the case. Is we've done one before with the Brett Bednar case where we said, you know, if you have any issues or worry, speak to the right people. But we are not here to try and do anything other than highlight cases and talk amongst ourselves. But if it's something that has affected you, please do
reach out to somebody.
And because that's like I said, the whole time there that's fizzing through my brain is get help. One phone call can fix these.
Just even if it's just to talk to somebody, to have your concerns heard, or to have the worries you have about your relationship or whatever it is, like, to have them
spoken out loud.
Yeah, but also, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, backed up, that you're justified, that your thoughts aren't crazy, that you're not...
To have a person outside the relationship just agree, listen to you.
Yes, like, agree with what you're saying and go, yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like, you're not crazy. Like...
We'll put a link to
100%.
Women's Aid.
Women's Aid.
We'll put a link to Women's Aid in all of our show notes this week.
I might also look up, actually, a just a general domestic abuse helpline, because Women's Aid is specific to women, and it's not just women that suffer from domestic abuse and coercive control.
They would accept
I think they would accept calls 100%.
Well.
But I'm going to put a couple up because
please do.
Some men can be funny about phoning Women's Aid. I'd imagine.
Yeah, because I was going to say that to you, not to take away from the case.
Sally.
Sorry, thank you. Not to take away from Sally at all. Her case is horrific. She has committed a murder, and she's come out right and said she
deserved to serve for manslaughter,
and good on her for doing that. It's not just women that are affected by these things, and I'll be the man in this podcast and say that men are affected by these things too. So we'll make sure that there's a Women's Aid and a Man's Aid, or whatever the equivalent is.
And as Sally pointed out, children too. Everyone can be affected by abuse in whatever form.
Childline is one of the best services that was ever set up in the UK, and I'm a huge believer in them.
100%.
My best mate's wife worked on the phones for them for a couple of years.
I can't even imagine.
She's an incredible social worker and worked for Childline on the phones for years and years and years, and I've got a lot of respect for her.
Oh.
Not just for that. She knows who she is, and she's not listening, but her husband will. So, Hey Tommy, how are you?
But I do just I feel so strongly about abuse and domestic abuse and how people react to it and how it's seen in people's eyes still. Like, it's still a very new thing that people feel comfortable to talk about it. It's so hard to talk about it.
Oh yeah, because it's gone on forever. Because that's while we were talking there, I quickly looked up on the laptop there. Remember my Alan Mayer story that I did? It was one of our Patreon episodes. So Alan Mayer was one of the last men hung in Stirling.
Yeah.
He was the last man.
At the Market Cross.
At the Market Cross, he was the last man hung in Stirling. But he was a horrific wife abuser.
Yes.
He used to lock her up in boxes and all that kind of stuff. And that was 1843, but he didn't get charged or tried for any of the abuse.
No, of course not.
It was just the murder that he got tried for, which and so 150 something years ago. So it's a fair way ago. But it's nice now that there is a statute for things like gaslighting, and because obviously as a society we've come a long way since the 1850s, but there's still a long way to go on it, and until people are happy to come out and phone things like Women's Aid and Childline, and there's no stigma attached to doing that. And even if you get the phone call and it's just somebody to talk to, then
they're more than happy
there's
to.
a huge weight off your shoulder once you've unloaded.
And they're so impartial, like the idea of going to family or friends and saying to them, look, like, I think I'm a victim in one way or another. That's a huge and scary thing to do. But phoning somebody impartial who's a stranger at the end of the phone, you don't even have to give them your name.
No.
If you don't want to, you'd have to give them any information. Just talk to them. Just have a conversation, go for a 5-minute stroll, phone somebody, talk to them.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Just do it.
I can't add
That's
any
all
more
I can
than
say
that.
is just do it. Pick up the phone them.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I didn't think we were going to get that deep tonight, but there we are.
Here we are.
That was lovely. Actually, you did that really well.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you. Actually, that was lovely.
Don't cry.
Don't. You can phone somebody afterwards. It'll be fine. Bob's being too nice to me. Is there a phone line for that?
I'll phone Rosalind.
Yeah.
She'll send you to hospital.
He's had too many drums. Thank you very much. That was cool.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's a fun. That's a funny one because there's a couple of things to take from that. And
a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers to that because she was a murderer at the end of the day. She served her time and she rightly said she did. But there's a load of issues to come from it.
100%. But for once, I feel quite proud of our justice system, and for the fact that it was recognised that her mental condition
was taken into account.
And her mental condition was made worse by the fact that she was a victim of abuse. And I think that should always be a factor in a case.
Yeah, because we've spoken on many occasions about how we don't think the justice system in this country is.
We're never very happy with it.
I think we do have a very good justice system in this country, and I think we're very lucky to have the justice system we have. We could be anywhere else in the world.
Much worse.
But
But for once,
yeah, I
stand by this.
I'll agree with you there. I think the right decision has been made at the right time.
Yeah,
and the right sentence was handed out originally, and the appeal process has worked properly as well.
I agree. And in case it couldn't be any clearer, I stand by you, Sally Challen, and I stand by any person, woman or man, who is a victim of abuse.
Well, there you are. And on that note, we'll move on to our usual harumph at the end. That's a good word, isn't it? Harumph.
Oh, yeah, harumph.
If you've liked what you listened to, and this is your first time listening to Twisted Britain, please do go on to your podcast application, wherever you listen to us, and hit subscribe and give us a review.
We've just read a few today, didn't we?
We did. We've had some lovely reviews.
Absolutely lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you to those of you who have reviewed us recently. If you are a long-time listener and haven't had that chance to hit a review on iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to, please do. It means a lot. It makes us
very happy.
It makes us very happy, and it makes us more visible to other people who've maybe never heard Twisted Britain before. Apple have just released new categories within their podcast application.
Yep.
And we are currently sitting ridiculously high up in the true crime category in the UK. And every time anybody leaves us a review or downloads us or so hit subscribe, that helps us.
Yeah, just
be seen by others. And we're not doing this for our own glory by any means, but we're trying to just let other people hear the cases that we're talking about. We're trying to do something a bit different. These aren't the normal cases you'll normally hear, so if you help us be more visible, more people will hear them, and that makes a massive difference. If you have liked what you hear and you want to join us on our social media platforms, which we have all of, we do most of them ourselves. Well, no, we do them all ourselves.
Sorry, did you hire somebody?
Oh, I wish I had though. No, we do them all ourselves, except one of us does Twitter and one of us does everything else. So if you'd like to find us on Twitter, you'll find us at
Twisted Britain.
If you'd like to find us on Facebook, you'd find us at
Twisted Britain.
If you'd like to find us on Instagram, you'll find us at
Twisted Britain.
If you'd like to join a lovely small group of people,
getting bigger every day.
Absolutely it is. We have a Facebook discussion group, which is a really cool place for people that enjoy the podcast to come and have a chat. You can
find that Twisted Britain discussion group.
You will find Twisted Britain discussion group, and it's the place we'll interact as ourselves.
Yeah, it's always us. Yeah.
We don't post as if you see us posting as Twisted Britain, it's because I've not hit interact as Bob Dale.
It's because I don't have to work social media.
But we'll always try and answer questions ourselves.
Yeah, we get some really good stuff. We get a whole mix of stuff. People sharing oh, have you heard this case? To just funny things like that one today, where it was a kid at school. The question was, would you rather be deserted on an island by yourself or with somebody else? And the kid is
or with somebody you hate.
With somebody you hate, that's it. And the kid's answered, with somebody I hate, because then at least I have something to eat.
Which is wonderful.
Fantastic thought.
Yeah, if you have enjoyed what you've listened to here, and you'd like to go on to try and support Twisted Britain beyond just listening and subscribing and reviewing, we have a Patreon subscription service where we all of our tiers get access to an extra episode every month.
You can also get a funky little badge sent right to your door with a little thank you note. Hope you've all received yours, new Patreons.
And we are going to have some stickers printed, and we will send everybody that is a Patreon a sticker set as well, including
existing patrons.
Oh, absolutely, everyone will get one. Yeah, and bugger it, we'll send you a Christmas card. We'll get some Twisted Britain Christmas. We'll get some baubles on our logo. We're gonna have to
updo our last year's Christmas photo. Even though it's my favourite one of us, we both look lovely, but I'm very, very drunk in that photo and wrapped in tinsel.
That's most of the photos of us, though.
Merry Christmas.
So yeah, if you'd like to find us, you'd find us on by just googling Patreon Twisted Britain.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you really, really love us, we do have merch.
We do. Nadine is beautifully modelling one tonight.
Mm-hmm. You can see that on our social media. If you go on any of them, there's a lovely photo of me and Bob in our lovely attire tonight. But you can find us on Spreadshirt,
and there's a pinned link on all of our social media.
Yeah, at the top of our social media.
If you do get anything, please do send us photos of you wearing them and representing Twisted Britain here, there, and everywhere. We'd love that. We've waffled on enough at the end of this now, I think. So we will take the time now to say thank you, love you, bye.
Thank you, love you, bye.
I have unfortunately reset our console, so I don't have Isaac to say thank you, love you, bye. But he he says it from his bed. So thank you, love you, bye, everybody.
Let's go get another drink.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.